those of you with binoculars, you can actually see that, right? You said entertaining. Back in the day, why they had the public hangings and stuff, because that was entertaining too. So, it's always great to be the first speaker of the day, especially first thing in the morning. I have a couple things I just want to touch upon, and you guys are all money people for the most part, numbers people, and I don't normally start with a joke and all, but I figure just to get myself going, because I'm not really a morning person. Back in the day, I was coaching a 12U summer baseball team, and we're in the championship game. We're in the bottom of the inning, and I got this kid pitching from Georgetown, and we're up 2 runs, and there were some errors, and all of a sudden the bases are loaded. 2 outs, or 1 out, bases loaded, and the kid's panicking, right? You can see he's just physically panicking because guys have dropped balls, he hit a kid, and we're on edge. And so I went out, and I don't normally, I'm not a Mr., you got to do this, you got to do that. All I said to him, listen, you got to relax. This is our game. And I said to him, let me ask you something. Of all the numbers, you know why all the numbers hate number 7? And he's looking at me like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And I go, why do the numbers hate number 7? Or afraid of number 7? And he goes, I don't know. Why? Because 7, 8, 9. And he's looking at me like, this is what you're going to tell me? We got the game online, and he's thinking about 7, 8, 9. What the hell does that even mean? And I said, think about it, 7, 8, 9. And he starts, laughing his ass off. And he strikes out the next 2 guys, and we get the trophy, and that was the end of the day. So that's what I have to share for you today. Why is everyone afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. So we have in our industry today a lot of challenges. We got challenges coming from our own manufacturers. We got challenges coming from the federal government and the state government. And there's a lot of disruption going on. One of the biggest disruptions right now that we're facing is a transition to EVs. And we in Massachusetts, since the mid-90s, we have glommed on to the California Air Resource Board rules. We passed a law that we have to do everything in terms of emissions that CARB does in California. And this relates to everything from cars to lawn equipment, home stuff, anything that's emissions related. And so CARB this summer, towards the end of the summer, they passed a rule that the manufacturers have to commit to 100% sales of EVs by 2035. And there's percentages that have to be hit over the next few years that the manufacturers have to comply with. So there are 15 states that are part of this plan. There are 2 states that have trigger rules that we have to absolutely follow everything CARB says, and we're one of them. So it's kind of out of our hands. The legislature's not going to change it. CARB's not going to change it. We submitted comments to CARB asking for at least some sort of midterm review of the numbers in the program to see if some transitioning changes could be made. They rejected that. So we are committed, the manufacturers operating here and in the other CARB states are committed to a 2035 goal of 100% non-ICE vehicles on new vehicles. And in that same year, at the end of the year, no more ICE vehicles could be sold as used vehicles. So there's some substantial disruption going to be occurring in Massachusetts and elsewhere over the next number of years. As part of that, you see the manufacturers putting out press releases all the time. We're going to have these EVs, we're going to have this type of menu, et cetera, et cetera. And you also have the manufacturers now talking about disrupting the franchise system on how to get those EVs out there. The big one we're chasing right now is the Ford Model E program. I don't know to what extent, if you're not a Ford dealer, you follow that stuff. At the annual meeting in October, I suggested to every dealer and every participant there that you really need to follow what's going on with the manufacturers, even your even the ones that are not part of your family, to get a sense of where the manufacturers are trying to take you. And Ford right now is really trying to squeeze out the smaller dealer. They're trying to squeeze out dealers who are not going to make the financial commitment to be an EV dealer moving forward. And it has, substantial ramifications potentially for the franchise system in Massachusetts and elsewhere, because they just can't carve out Massachusetts. They just can't carve out the other CARB states. They have to roll this out everywhere. And so if you think about it, if you're in Arkansas and you're a small dealer, Ford dealer, and you're a very successful dealer in Arkansas, you're going to be asked to make the same financial commitment of over $1 million to convert to an EV system of selling, retailing, servicing vehicles that Ford is demanding of you, to the same extent that the Ford dealer in Metro Boston is going to do. And, and they're really looking to upend the system because, Farley seems to be fixated on doing what Elon Musk does. So, the states are all challenging that to some degree. We sent letters to Ford. We've had discussions with Ford. My colleagues around the country have done the same. There's a couple lawsuits now out of New York. There's a couple states that are challenging the Ford setup before their dealer boards, their motor vehicle dealer boards in those states, Mississippi and Arkansas. Illinois filed a complaint with their dealer board. 27 dealers filed a complaint there. And then word came out a week or so ago that Honda is in discussions with Sony to create a EV that will not be sold through dealers. Dealers will only be allowed to service those vehicles. That's, when you look at Honda, now you're looking at Acura. So there's a lot of stuff going on out there. You look at Volkswagen, they're talking about revitalizing the Scout brand without dealers. That's what they've talked about. And I was talking with a couple of your colleagues in the back, and I read the automotive news, the Europe one, the Canadian one, and you always get a good sense of what manufacturers are going to try to do here by seeing what's going on in the other countries and the continent of Europe. So if you have the time of your day, I would just cut through the headlines. You can do the headlines pretty easily just to see that there's not a lot of discussion out there of enhancing the franchise networks the way we see them today. It's all about disruption and changing things, and so that's one of the challenges that's making it harder for the dealers. So you can see that some of the smaller dealers that are maybe doing a buy-sell are seeing maybe some of the headwinds that are going to be developing down the road on that end. The state and the feds have created subsidy programs for the consumers to tap into EV sales. Some of the problems you're going to see there as it gets more rolled out is that there's not a consistent number. We're at 3,500. The feds go up to 7,500, but it's based on, at the federal level, you have battery content requirements where the battery minerals have to come from either North America or a country that the United States has a free trade agreement with. There's also requirements then on the battery manufacturing where it has to be done in North America. And there's percentages that kick in on that as well. So, one of the things we said to our Congress folks when we were griping about all this on the federal level is that there's going to be substantial consumer kickback at the dealer level when people realize that they may not be buying a vehicle that they can tap the 7,500 in on because of the battery content and the battery manufacturer. So dealers are going to need to be prepared for some of the anxiety and anger that consumers bring to the table when they realize they're not going to be eligible for the tax credit at the federal level. So there's things like that in this whole transition to EVs that we need to be aware of and be prepared for. The going on from that, any questions on that type of challenge? Any questions, comments, or yes, sir?
Well, what's the likelihood? What likely is going to probably get extended anyways?
Which?
The cancellation of selling the
See, so I'm an unapologetic free market capitalist guy. I really am. If you know me, I'm pretty outspoken about that. I would not have had any of these goals, standards, if you will. I would have let the market dictate where we're going on all this. I think if manufacturers want to develop EVs, clearly they're trying to bribe people to buy EVs. When you look at they're throwing money around. And I've said to legislators, it's crazy the amount of money that we throw around. We've spent over $50 million in Massachusetts since 2014 on the More EV rebate program, and it's only put out 27,000 cars. In what, 7 years, 8 years? I mean, we sell on average 300,000 new vehicles a year, and we're talking 27,000 consumers have taken advantage of the rebates in Massachusetts. I bet you we could all come up with a better way to spend $50 million than to give it to people who would have bought an EV anyway. So I think there's going to be challenges on whether CARB changes their rule, as these percentages maybe don't get hit over the next few years. They do an assessment and maybe change some numbers. I don't know, but absent a federal law, all Biden talks about is he's got goals, right, of 50% EVs by, 2030, I think he said. So absent a federal law, we're stuck with what we're stuck with. And unfortunately, the law allows the legislature to change our participation in CARB, but that's a heavy lift. Because the legislature's, and I'm going to get into it right now, the legislature's getting more and more liberal. Right now, the progressives clearly dominate the Senate, and they're over 50% in the House here. And, but for a kind of moderate speaker and a moderate Ways and Means chair, the craziness has kind of been put at abeyance, if you will. And so well, let me jump into that right now. We've got a new governor coming in January. We've had 8 years of Charlie Baker, who's been very good for business. He certainly was better for business than his predecessor, who was probably the worst governor we've ever had. He was very good for us. And when you look at what the incoming governor has done as Attorney General, other than spending a lot of time with suing the Trump administration, and that's been going now for 2 years, a year and plus. And she, I think, has kind of left dealers alone, except for the occasional violations that they have found. And I say this all the time: the easiest way to stay out of trouble is don't get into trouble. Follow the rules. And we put out a lot of material. We have a lot of webinars and seminars on compliance stuff. And if you're not seeing our material, let me know and we can get you on the list. But when I started in 2000, you didn't have the level, I don't think the level of compliance with state and federal rules as we do today. I think it's been much better. I think the dealers are focused on doing the right things for the consumers, for their personnel, et cetera. But those challenges are going to get a little bit tougher. We're the Democrat governor, we're the Democrat legislature. Who knows what's going to happen? Baker was was able to tamp down some of those passions from the left to have a more pro-business approach. So it'll be interesting to see what approach a new governor will take, because there's a big difference between an AG, who's the cop, versus having to actually run something. So we'll see. I think she's going to govern, slightly left of center, where Baker was slightly right of center. I don't think she'll necessarily be crazy in her governance, but there certainly will be people on her staff and in the legislature who will, I think, be a little bit more aggressive in going in that direction. So, the government affairs stuff will be interested to see how that plays out. They're swimming in cash, yet they keep talking about tax hikes, not tax cuts. We've got the millionaires tax that barely passed in November. So that's going to have to be implemented, and we'll see how that plays out. As we've seen in other states, taxpayers in that bracket have moved on to other states. They've gone to Florida, they've gone to the Texases, the Tennessees, they've gone to places without an income tax, quite frankly. And it's something I've told all my kids to embrace. 4 of them have. One is still an outlier. Well, that's her fault. So on the government's level, we have to see what happens. The more concern will be with the new AG, because she did run a very aggressive campaign from the left, but not so much to the left that she was able to beat a very progressive candidate in the Democrat primary. So we'll be ramping up awareness and compliance as we get into the new year, so that they don't have a reason to go after dealers and other members of the business community. One other thing that we're facing that dealers need to be on top of is the FTC compliance on the safeguards rule. There was a December 9th deadline for a bulk of the rule changes, the amendments. A number of them have been pushed to June 9th. But you shouldn't take June 9th as some sort of reprieve from the governor not to do what you need to do, because there are pieces of the rules, the amendments that do kick in next week, or tomorrow rather, right? Tomorrow, yeah, tomorrow. Jeez. So we've been on top of that all year, trying to get dealers focused on that and give them the tools to be compliant, including with our partners here at O'Connor and Drew. So be aware of that. It's just, there wasn't a reprieve from everything till June 9th, just part of it. So stay on top of that. Just 2 other quick things. You hear a lot of talk of a recession that's coming. And I don't have that crystal ball. I don't think anyone has that proper crystal ball. But, clearly there's warning signs that there is a recession of some sort coming. And so you just have to ask yourself, are you ready for a recession if something happens with the economy? Are you ready with your business model? Are you ready with your own people? There are dealership operations that, because of a lack of inventory and other activities, have probably reduced their workforce. If we're going to get into a situation next year, even with a recession, but the manufacturers are making more cars available for your lots, are you prepared for any type of influx of vehicle supply and potentially any consumer demand? Because even in a recession, people do need their cars and trucks. So you need to really ask yourself, are you prepared for the positives and the negatives of a recession? And the other thing, I've talked to dealers about over the last couple of years on an individual basis is, are your people ready for a recession? There's a lot of personnel at dealerships who've been doing very well on the income side, and they've also been doing very well on running up debt. And if the money isn't coming in necessarily on the income side for them, are they prepared personally for some of the disruptions in their own lives, which could impact your dealerships? People are asking for more money. People maybe bending some rules and trying to get more money into their pockets. So there's an awareness that dealers need to have of what's going on with your personnel, especially if times are going to be tough. And because certainly there are, if you look at the stats, there are people who've run up debt. There are people who are, spending like the proverbial drunken sailor, and not maybe prepared themselves for any type of downturn here. And then just a final piece on the state stuff. The minimum wage goes to $15 an hour on January 1. It's the last of the approved statutory hikes right now. As part of that, we also, in the deal, got rid of the holiday and Sunday premium pay. So going hand in hand with the liberalness of our legislature and the governor, they've been talking about another pattern of wage hikes, but they haven't gone anywhere because we had this deal in place for the last number of years. And so as we hit 15 in a couple weeks, and as the feds keep looking at jacking up from the $7.25 an hour that a number of states are bought into, have tied themselves to, be prepared to see any word, any debate on a wage hike from the state on the minimum wage. Because that always, you may not have many individuals, if any, at your stores who are being paid minimum wage, but what that does do is drive up the demand from personnel for wage hikes, asking where theirs is, right? So if you've got people getting paid 20, and all of a sudden the minimum wage is going to go to 20, they're going to say, well, why can't I get 25 then? Because why should I be paid the minimum wage when I'm not getting paid the minimum wage now? So you have a lot of these pressures that will come to bear over time. So just be aware of that and be prepared if things do happen. Other than, every day is Christmas, and it's great to be 6 feet above ground as opposed to below. That's what I got to say. Just some observations. Any questions? Comments? Nothing? No funny jokes? 7, 8, 9? Yes, sir. Well, they certainly aren't. They certainly are not fighting it. They've run a campaign now all in on EVs, which, I pointed out at the time, apparently no one plays poker in NADA world, because if you're all in on something, there's only two things that will happen. You either can win big or lose big. And so I don't know if I would have necessarily used those words, but I think the point they were trying to make is that where you have these forces at play who are trying to make it sound like dealers are not desirous of selling electric vehicles or zero-emission vehicles, if you will, that dealers have to be all in. I keep pointing out to legislators and others that dealers sell what consumers want. Dealers are great at meeting the needs of the consumers as they come into the door. That includes EVs. If there are people who want EVs, we'll sell the EVs. It doesn't have to be a segregated PR campaign. So NADA has not really, that I've seen, chimed in on the 2035. They're more of a national group. So I think if something were to happen federally, they may jump on that, but they'll probably do it in cahoots with the manufacturers. So we'll see. It's as Kevin was saying, is there going to be any potential changes? We'll see. I don't have that crystal ball. If there's such a robust, demand and supply of vehicles over the next 5 to 7 years, and we can meet those goals, then I think everything will be fine. If there's not, I think the way the mineral needs for the batteries is such extreme right now that it's going to be tough to hit the inventory marks that are going to be needed, I think, right now. And I've said that in public hearings and in comments that it's ridiculous that in this chase for minerals, we're ripping up earth, we're ripping, strip mining whole countrysides, if you will, and now we're going to be ripping up the ocean bottom chasing these minerals. Does it really make sense destroying the earth to so-called save the earth because of this global warming narrative? So, there's technologies that people are looking at on the hydrogen side, and that will be interesting to see if Toyota, Toyota's heavily vested in that. Absent, putting solar panels on cars, there's a lot more questions than answers right now. But dealers are committed to selling what consumers want, and as I said earlier, I'm more of a free market guy, and let the consumers make those choices. I think as certainly as gasoline and oil become more scarce over time, and pricing will be adjusted and availability be adjusted. People are going to need non-ICE vehicles to just get to work, get their families to school. Yes, sir. So in our state, back in 2000, 2001, we sat down with the manufacturers and we did a rewrite of our franchise law, and we made it much stronger than what was in place previously. We rewrote the whole thing, and we got it through the legislature. The governor signed it in 2002, and in there we have a very strong provision that manufacturers cannot own dealerships, cannot sell cars themselves, that everything's got to flow through a dealership. And there's a couple carve-outs for that. One carve-out is if it's a dealer development program. If the manufacturer has a dealer development program and they're looking to put a minority owner or a woman into a place of a dealership as a new DP, and that person's going to need financial help from the manufacturer, the person's got to come up with a minimum amount of financing to be that DP, and the manufacturer can support that operation. I think it's 7 years. The person has to be fully vested, and the manufacturer can go away. There's also a carve-out is if a dealer dies and the manufacturer has to run the place until they can get a dealer in there, or if a person resigns the point because of a felony conviction. So there's a couple carve-outs. But overall, we have a very strong law. There are presently 17 states that have nothing protecting their dealers on those things. There are a number of states, you may recall over the last, when Tesla was starting to pop up, states were scrambling to pass laws to hinder what Tesla was doing. And some states built in carve-outs in their law for Tesla. For example, Colorado has a carve-out, I think, for 3 or 4 stores. California has carve-outs for, I think, 7 stores. New York has carve-outs. Virginia, a couple other states did carve-outs because they had nothing in place to combat manufacturer ownership. The reason why we were so aggressive at the time is because if you look at what Ford was doing, Ford had this program in the Kansas City area where they bought up all the Ford dealerships and then tried running them themselves, and it was a complete disaster. And so, we said to legislators at the time, we need to protect the dealer body here from something like that in the future. So we took very aggressive steps to write that into our law. Unfortunately, not all the states have things like that. And what was it? I think GM was talking about creating a separate franchise for Corvette. Under our law, they could not do that here because they're already selling Corvettes through dealers. Right? The dealers are buying the Corvettes from the dealer and selling them, they're retailing them themselves. They cannot pull back on that because we already have in place. Now, here, if a manufacturer tries to split off or create a new product, let's say this Honda Sony thing takes off and they want to create a new line of vehicle and they haven't had dealers, they still cannot do that, technically. They would need to have some sort of dealer body. And people say, well, what about Tesla? There's Tesla stores in Massachusetts. And, no one wants to hear me on this, but, when I talk about this to the national press, they have dealers. They have a dealer license. Tesla has gone ahead in those communities and applied for a Class 1 dealer license. And what they've done is they between Tesla USA and Tesla Massachusetts is they've created a franchise agreement. Now, it's completely, it doesn't hold water, if you will. We asked the Attorney General to look into it. She didn't want to touch it. This one and the previous one, Coakley. But they've gone ahead and gotten a dealer license. They run the place as a dealership. They don't do that elsewhere. Elsewhere, they've been allowed to open stores as themselves. And where they also run into problems is these online sales and being able to deliver vehicles into those states. So we don't have those problems here. That's where we're at. I think we have a very strong law to protect against those types of things. Unfortunately, not every state does. So, and I think that's what the manufacturers love to pick at, is they try to find the weak points and go at it. You know, you look at just a quick piece of, you know, irony, if you will. So Georgia has a carve-out for Tesla. Yet the Georgia dealers have been fighting Rivian getting the same carve-out. I don't know how, you know, I don't live in Georgia. I don't carry Georgia's water. I just don't know how you could do that. We would get our head kicked in if we were trying to do that here. You know, say, okay, Tesla's all right, but Rivian's not all right. And Rivian has made a commitment to build a factory there. I think $9 billion, or $4 billion, some substantial investment. I know the governor came out today, and I think Hyundai's got a $9 billion plant going into Georgia. But I just don't know how you can make those arguments with a straight face before a legislative body that, yeah, okay, we were all right on the Tesla carve-out, but Rivian, we have issues. So far they've been successful on that. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, thank you. Oh, yes, sir.
Question for you. Does MSADA have a position on ERTC? And also, do you have a feel for the Massachusetts dealer body that has applied based off government mandates?
And, like, do I have a sense of what all the dealers are doing? I do not. Of what all the dealers are doing? No. You know, I've spoken to individual dealers.
Do you share an opinion on ERTC?
I defer to others, professionals, on that. You know, if you want to look at the PPP stuff, you know, the monies that the feds were throwing around, I was surprised that they so quickly were forgiven of those amounts to businesses and stuff. You know, when there's a lot of money, I guess government gets giddy. And that's some of the fears you have with this legislature now, is they've got so much money that they're just going to start creating different types of programs. And as I've warned before, as you build in more spending into your finances at the state level, when the downturn comes, that's when they start talking about tax hikes and stuff. And so I don't have there's no general MSADA opinion on that. It's really up to dealers dealing with their professionals and figuring that stuff out. I'm not dodging the question. It's you know, everyone has a unique situation that they really need to discuss with their professional advisors. Anything else? Great. Well, you should all have my contact info. If there's anything that ever comes up, just email or text me, and there's like a lot of people do. So thank you for the opportunity today. Really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the afternoon.